everyone, and welcome back. My name is Mary Osborne, and I am the coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life at DePaul. We are here with another episode of our 90 Stories for 90 Years. So over this academic year, we are celebrating our 90th year on campus, and we're interviewing faculty, staff, alumni, students who've had an impact on the fraternity and sorority community here at DePaul. So we're really excited to have Zoe with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited.
Wonderful. We'll just go ahead and get started then. If you don't mind introducing yourself, so telling me name, degree, hometown, chapter affiliation, all the fun things.
Yeah, so my name is Zoe. I'm the current chapter advisor for Aopai at DePaul, and I was initiated in Aopai in fall. I had to think about it for a second. Fall of 2013 at the Florida State chapter. I was actually a colonizing member, which means I was a founding member of my chapter, which was an amazing experience. I graduated from FSU in fall of 2016 with a double major in psychology and family and child sciences. And I'm from Chicago, was raised in the burbs. So once I graduated from FSU, made my way back up to Chicago, and I've been here ever since.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we're really thankful that as an AOPI member, you've invested so much in the AOPI chapter here at DePaul, as well as the chapter advisor. So thanks for bringing your Florida State AOPI up here. We appreciate it. So tell me a little bit about what you've been up to since you graduated.
Yeah, so I currently work in human resources for a commercial real estate company. I've been at the same company for about the last 3.5 years. I'm a senior HR generalist, so that means I kind of get to touch all the functional areas of HR, which I love, kind of being involved in a little bit of everything. You know, really fortunate to work for the company that I do. Really great culture, great people. So really glad to have been here for the last 3.5 years. And then outside of that, I just got married a couple of months ago, which is exciting. My husband and I have been together for about 7 years. I actually met him through one of my chapter sisters at Florida State. So another reason why I'm thankful for Aopai. And then, you know, due to COVID, kind of just laying low right now. I usually like to be pretty busy doing a lot of stuff, but just kind of hanging out with our pup, Wrigley, and then, you know, being involved in Aopai, which, you know, I love that even though things are virtual, I can still just be as active, you know, in the Aopai world in a virtual setting.
Wonderful. Well, you had quite the COVID experience in with planning a wedding during all of that. So tell me a little bit about why you decided to join a sorority and what specifically interested you in Aopai, especially knowing that that was like a new chapter and starting that process and experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so going to FSU and, you know, being from Chicago, I didn't know anybody who was attending the university, and I was not nervous. I was so excited to be down there. I always wanted to go to Florida State because that's where my family had went. So, you know, kind of going through formal recruitment, I knew I wanted to make those, you know, connections and find friends. But I think that the reason why I decided to join the FSL community over, you know, just joining different organizations or clubs on campus, which I also did. But the reason why that was a priority was because a lot of my family members were part of the FSL community, and seeing, you know, after graduation, how they still had really deep connections with their brothers or with their sisters. You know, my dad graduated from undergrad almost 50 years ago, and he still talks to his fraternity brothers all the time. They're in group chats during Florida State games. You know, they're talking on the phone. They're like yelling at the screens together. I just thought it was the coolest thing that he had those connections, you know, for such a long period of time after he graduated. So that was definitely why I went through formal recruitment. And, you know, I went through my first year, and at the end, I got my list back on the last day for preference round. And honestly, I just knew I wasn't going to find my home through that process. All of the chapters at Florida State are great, but I just knew I really wanted to invest my time and my effort, and I just didn't find the home that was right for me. So I went through freshman year, and, you know, I had a really great time. I really enjoyed my freshman year. I was involved in a lot of other things, but I kind of felt like something was missing. So sophomore year, decided to kind of look into what I could do. I knew I didn't want to go through formal recruitment again, but then I heard that Aopai was coming on campus, and kind of went back and forth. I'm like, oh, this could be really cool. You know, it's a new chapter, but, you know, I don't really know kind of what it's about. So in the end, I'm just like, you know, it's not going to hurt to go to the interview. It's not going to hurt to go to the first round of their recruitment and kind of just see what it's about. And very, very quickly, I knew that Aopai was my home. So, you know, going through the colonization process during recruitment, a lot of the people that were advising us were older members. They were members who, you know, had been alum for several years. They've been alum for 40 years. There were some collegiate chapters there. So, you know, maybe new members or members who were about to graduate the next year. So kind of seeing Aopais in all of their phases of life coming back interacting with one another and having really genuine interactions. And these members didn't know each other, a lot of them. You could have been from California or New York or Florida. So, since I was looking for those connections after I had graduated, I kind of knew that AOPI was going to be my home, and, just kind of seeing what the organization stood for throughout the process. I just really fell in love with AOPI quickly. And when I got a bid, I was just so ecstatic. And I, knew that I was going to have a big impact on my life, but I never could have imagined then, how much it's really meant to me over the years.
That is so cool. And I love how you talked about all of the members that you had an interaction with before you even joined the organization. Like, that's such a unique experience that not very many fraternity and sorority members have.
Right.
And I think that that's very specific to the expansion experience, right? The new chapter experience. But tell me a little bit about some of the members who've had an impact on your sorority experience overall.
Yeah, so I feel like there were definitely a lot when I was a collegian, but kind of the first and kind of most impactful, and she's still one of my role models today, was our, they're called educational leadership consultants. So a lot of chapters have them. They're recent grads of their chapter, in my case, Aopai, who travel around to chapters and kind of just like help them out. If they have a big event coming up, maybe they're doing something really well and they kind of want to see what's going on. So they really have this cool experience to travel to all of the chapters around the country. Being a new chapter at Florida State, we had one of the ELCs, we called them a resident consultant. So she would stay with us the entire semester. In the fall, in the spring, she would kind of come and go between her chapters. And her name was Morgan. And when I had my first one-on-one with Morgan, she was really kind of what set my expectations of what a member of AOPI should stand for. Being an ELC is a really amazing job. It's something I really wish that I would have had the opportunity to do, but it didn't work out with my timing. But it's very tough. We're calling her and texting her at, first thing in the morning, late at night, throughout the day. There's 250 members in my chapter. So there's a lot of demands on her, running a chapter of that size. I just don't know how she did it, but she handled all of it with such patience, with such understanding. Like, she never let us see her sweat ever. She was just so polished in everything that she did. And, that's one of the reasons why I started advising, was because of her. I'm like, I want to be there for, the members in the future, just like she was there for me, and just unconditionally there for me at all times. I was vice president of recruitment my first year, and that was definitely a tough position for a new member to take on. And even after she was an ELC, she was always there for me. So, just seeing like the genuine love that she had for AOPI and the members, it just really had an impact on me. And, even after I've graduated, I always hoped when I started advising that, I could make an impact on the collegiate members, just like Morgan made on me. But I don't think I thought at the time how much the collegians would make an impact on my AOPI experience, even though, I've been an AOPI for 7 years. And there's so many collegians who I think had that impact on me. But my first officer, Kat, she was vice president of recruitment for the DePaul chapter. And she is the most understanding and welcoming person, not sister of AOPI, but person I have ever met in my entire life. If you're her best friend, if you don't know her, maybe you guys had like a little spat or something in the past, she is going to treat you with such respect, with such dignity. And she was just such like a decent, kind-hearted human being. And I think seeing a sister, like her and like Morgan, that our founders would be so happy today that we have members like that in our organization, even though they're completely different people. Kind of those two members really, really made an impact on, the way that I want to be myself as a member and the way that I want to, give back to the organization too.
Those are both such cool stories. And I'm going to see if we can like pull in Aopai to help connect you with Morgan and let her see this interview, because I think that she would be really proud to so we'll see if we can get her to see this interview. But thank you so much for sharing both of those. It's so funny. So I served as an educational leadership consultant for my national sorority, and as you were talking about it, it was like bringing back all of these like warm fuzzy memories. So thank you so much for sharing. So tell me a little bit about how you became an advisor and why you stay involved in this capacity. I know you mentioned that the students really and the chapter members really drive that passion and that enthusiasm for it, but tell me a little bit more.
Yeah, so in Aopai, you're usually supposed to take kind of like a year off after you graduate, just be like an alum for a year, and then you're more than welcome to start advising. So that was very tough for me being on our executive board the entire time I was in the chapter. It was kind of hard to take a break. And I know if I would have reached out, probably everyone probably would have said, totally like come and join. But I'm like, I'm going to take the year, kind of see how it goes. But I was just like itching to get involved. So I ended up in February of 2018 emailing the chapter, at DePaul and kind of just seeing what they had available. And like I mentioned, I was recruitment advisor, I was vice president of recruitment, and they had recruitment advisor open. So I was just so excited. So I think the timing really just worked out very well. And why I advise, I think there's a lot of pieces, but probably the two biggest are, just the impact that Aopai has made on me. I feel like I've gained so much from being a part of this organization. So, in any way that I can give back to the organization that I love so much is something that I'm going to do, even outside of advising, whether it be on calls or, giving feedback and surveys. Like I'm all about it. I'm going to do it. And then also kind of like you mentioned, I really do just advise for the collegians. I had the best collegiate experience. I got so much out of being part of Aopai, and I really want to help these collegiate members have the same experience. So, whether that's through, one-on-one advising with like my officer, or just being at the end of the day a sister there to, listen to them, whether it has to do with Aopai or not. And I think, also kind of just helping them learn about Aopai. I think it's really important to learn about the organizations that we're a part of and kind of understand them. So really any way that I can make the collegiate experience as wonderful as it was for me, for them, is kind of what I use as my driving force to advise.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I know I love working with collegiate women and getting to see them grow and develop over long periods of time. That having that real 4-year experience to see them from the time that they join till the time that they graduate is really powerful. And I share that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
What is one of the most impactful experiences from your membership in Aopai?
There are definitely a lot, but I think one that's kind of brought me full circle was back in, I think it was 2019, I had the opportunity to attend one of Aopai's conferences. So every winter we have, it's called Leadership Academy. It's basically this big weekend where advisors and, officers will fly out to our headquarters in Nashville, and we'll kind of have a weekend of programming. So, different workshops, sisterhood activities, networking. So definitely really fun. And in 2019, when I was still recruitment advisor at the time, the kind of whole focus was on recruitment. So myself, the chapter president, and the vice president of recruitment got to fly to Nashville to attend. And we started off, it was when Chicago had this really terrible period of time in 2019 where it was like negative 40 degrees. It was super cold, like everything was like shut down. So our flight ended up getting delayed like 6 hours, and we got there late. And, that was just not really, we were all so excited, texting throughout the day. But we kind of got there and we're like, oh, this is not how we wanted to start it out. But, from like the second I walked in the door, since I know a lot of our headquarters staff members, I was like seeing sisters that I knew, and I'm like, okay, I don't care. Like, I don't care that we're late. This is going to be so much fun. So we're going to like our programming, and there was this long hallway with different doors on the side in the big conference room. And I'm walking down there with my officers, and I stopped in the middle of the hall, and one of my chapter sisters stopped on the other side of the hall. We saw each other. And we ran and gave each other the biggest hugs, and we started to cry. And I'd seen some of my chapter sisters already, and it was really great. But I think the reason why it impacted us so much, her name is also Morgan, another Morgan, was that she was chapter president when I was vice president of recruitment, and the whole weekend was focusing on the chapter president and the vice president of recruitment. So we really had like this whole full circle moment, and we spent the weekend together. We saw our chapter advisor. When we went to FSU, we saw the new chapter president and the new vice president of recruitment from FSU. And it was just like the biggest full circle moment. I just felt like very, very content that I had like all of these women who made such a big impact on my collegiate career. And then, as still kind of a recently new advisor, seeing all of the alum in Chicago that I'd met, like the volunteers in Chicago that I'd met. So it was just kind of like all my favorite people in one place in Aopai. And it was just something I know I will always remember for sure.
That is such a cool story. And I love how you talked about the full circle moment, and that it was like to add layers on layers of like, yes, the chapter president when you were VP of recruitment, and then that this was a whole weekend dedicated to the experience of those officers that you also just told that beautifully, because I was just so, you could definitely like picture that experience. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
What is your favorite value of your organization and why?
Ooh, okay. So, well, in Aopai, we have this statement. It's called the object of the fraternity. So it's basically it's like a paragraph long, and it just kind of shows the outside world what Aopai is. So if you read this statement, you would kind of know what Aopai is and what we stand for. And I've always felt very connected to it because there's 4 values in there that I just feel really closely kind of represent what I value. Their character, dignity, scholarship, and college loyalty. You know, college loyalty, like I mentioned, I always wanted to go to Florida State. So having that opportunity and, you know, being like a complete diehard FSU fan is something I really, really have always had. You know, scholarship, I think Aopai, I was always very dedicated to academics, but I think Aopai, you know, even pushed me even further to getting dedicated to academics. So that was important. You know, dignity, I think that if I'm ever going to expect respect and kindness from others, I need to give that to other people too. But I think the biggest value would be character. You know, for me, I think over time, especially becoming part of Aopai, I've realized at the end of the day, my character is the most important thing to me. You know, I just try to be like a decent, kind human being. And that's really all that I ask from, you know, other people too. And I think that the reason why I appreciate character in the Aopai sense is because a lot of my character was built by Aopai. You know, I grew up just kind of always having a really good work ethic and working hard and being driven. And, you know, I got to kind of hone that in Aopai. But I think the biggest thing is, you know, I grew up, my siblings were a lot older than I was, and they were both boys. My brothers are absolutely amazing, but I never really had like a big group of like girlfriends or anything like that, or sisters. And, you know, when I was, for example, vice president of recruitment, I had the best experience. I had a lot of highs. I had a lot of really amazing moments, but I also had some lows, and I also made mistakes. And, you know, the understanding and grace that I received from my chapter sisters, even when I made mistakes and when they told me, you know, it's okay, like, you're fine, like, you're our sister and we love you and we understand. And they still, you know, allowed me to have leadership positions in the future, even if I made mistakes or if I, you know, did something wrong. I just think that just completely changed my thought process in being a member of an FSL organization and my own character personally, and just trying to always be an understanding person, always trying to give people a second chance and just never knowing what someone's going through. I think that they really did that for me, and that kind of helped. You know, that was always a foundation of what I thought character was in myself, but I think that it helped me grow that even more. And today they really kind of helped form who I am.
That's so wonderful to hear. And I love the part where you talked about where I guess as an organization you will find your 4 like core values. Because I think sometimes that message gets lost. Like sometimes whenever I'm talking to students, they may know their values, but they don't know where in the sorority or fraternity that they came from, or things like that. So I'm glad that you like cited your source, so to speak, with your values. So I appreciated that. But I think as an alumna of a sorority, and I kind of heard this a little bit in yours, like how it developed your character like over time. But I also think as alumni, my values, at least, the ones that resonate most with me kind of change depending upon, you know, what phase of life that I'm in. And so I love that you talked about how character has really like helped form who you are throughout time, but that's the one that you still hold like most near and dear to your spirit. So thank you so much. All right, we are wrapping it up with our closing question. Okay. So tell me what your favorite memory of all time of being a member of your organization is.
Okay, I was actually talking about this with 2 officers during our kind of like officer transition after elections. And I think that a lot of people assume that like my favorite memory is from like leadership, and I've loved all of my leadership positions, and I feel like I know my organization really well. I'm kind of like a nerd like that. But it's actually like kind of completely the opposite. So my favorite memory is participating in this philanthropy that FSU had. It was called Cheers for Children, and it's kind of, you know, clear by the name, but it was one of the fraternities, one of the IFC fraternities would partner with our head football coach at the time, who had a foundation for his kiddo who had a very rare disease. So they would put on this big cheerleading competition. I know it sounds superficial, but I promise it's very cool. It's for a good cause. So all the NPC organizations would, you know, put on like a routine, and they'd have like a whole cheerleading competition, and then all of the funds raised would go back to our head football coach's foundation. So when I heard about it, I was so excited to participate. The first year that we were on campus, we weren't initiated. We were still new members. So we didn't participate the first year. The second year, I asked our philanthropy chair, I'm like, Katie, do you mind if I kind of like coach this and spearhead? I'm like, I'll let you know. I was a cheerleader growing up. I was very subpar. I was not great, but I did love coaching. I was a good coach, I promise. She's like, oh my gosh, go ahead, take it over. So the 3 years that I was there, I got to coordinate the philanthropy like on the AOPI side. And I just had the best experiences being involved. And I know that this isn't like the biggest deal, but like our second year was definitely my favorite. And we placed like top 3 in the competition our second year ever participating. And our sisters were like so excited. We raised so much money for the foundation. It was just a really great experience, but it wasn't even about, like the competition itself. It was more the experiences that I had with my chapter sisters doing something that I loved, doing something that they loved, whether it was dance or cheerleading or gymnastics, together with your sisters that we thought we would never do again. Once you're out of high school, we're retired, we're older now. Getting to do it with your sisters for a good cause, I think it was just really impactful. We would have like practices at like 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night, or like at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And like, you don't want to wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. Like, you want to wake up late, study, get all your stuff done, like maybe go to chapter, hang out with your sisters. But we never were negative about it, even if it was early, even if it was late. We just had the best times. We were so goofy and fun, but we took it seriously. And, a lot of the people that were involved, I probably never would have had like those deep connections with if it wasn't for participating in this philanthropy. I could talk about it all day, but I'll just close by saying, I think the reason why I think of it as my favorite memory is because, one night in that second year, we were leaving our practice. We went to a new gym that day because the one we originally went to was booked. And I was like thanking the owner. I'm like, thank you so much for allowing us to, use your space. I know it was a little bit last minute. And he goes, I have to tell you, usually we have groups come in here and they're arguing, they're not communicating well. They might be, yelling at each other, or they're not taking it seriously, or they're complaining. And he goes, I've never seen a group work together like yours. I've never seen a group that's had so much fun, but has had like such a good like routine, like such a good like performance. When you talked to your sisters, they were listening to what you were saying, even if it was, constructive criticism, which you have to give. If they were telling you something, you were listening to them. And you guys just seemed like you were having the best time. And he's like, I've just never seen a group work like that before. So I just had to let you know. And on the way home, not to be dramatic, I like started to kind of tear up. I started to cry. And I'm like, that's really what Aopai at FSU kind of stood for. That's how we were as an entire group. But I think those individual 25 of us really kind of embodied those characteristics. So even if we were last place, even if we were absolutely terrible, just having those experiences with such a great group of members is something I'll remember for the rest of my life.
That's so, I love that story. And there is no judgment on anyone's favorite memory. Everyone has different reasons they join fraternities and sororities. But I think the coolest part and the part that stood out to me is like, even in like something like a random philanthropy event for another organization, you still learn lessons and still build. That's really where a lot of relationships are built, but there are still lessons to be learned in those experiences. Yeah. Even if they're funny, goofy, you end up in last place. Yeah. So I think that you tied that together so well.
Thanks. No, it was seriously the best. And I'm like, I know I'm never going to get to do anything like that again. So even though I just got to do it for 3 years, it's something I'm going to value for forever.
Awesome. Well, Zoe, thank you again so much for talking with us today. Like, I really appreciated getting to know you better, and I'm sure that everyone out there will appreciate your perspective on your time in AOPI. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope so too.
Yeah. Well, for everyone out there, don't go anywhere. We still have plenty 90 stories for 90 years throughout the rest of this academic year. So make sure you check back in. But that is all we have for today. So I will see you all later. Bye.
Bye.